I want to talk about Reese Witherspoon and her latest comments in Glamour magazine about AI. She said, it's so important that women are involved in AI because it will be the future of filmmaking. And you can be sad and lament it all you want, but the change is here. And then they went ahead and asked her what she uses AI for. And she says, I use AI every day. I use search tools like Perplexity. I use vetted AI. Like if you're buying a blender, it'll show you 6 different blenders and recommend the best product. And then I use AI Assistant. Simple AI is an AI assistant that can be really helpful for anyone who doesn't want to make a doctor's appointment. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I feel like she's such a powerhouse in Hollywood, and she's kind of missing the core industry concerns for what AI will do to affect those creative fields. And it kind of deflects those questions of like what it means for AI to be using movies and like books and all that to make AI art. And it parallels her previous NFT endorsement. So it seems like she's kind of jumping from whatever people are talking about without actually learning what the concerns are within her own industry to speak about those and how they're relevant to her industry. So it's kind of just showing the disconnect between, celebrity endorsements and like messaging and like the industry reality. Also kind of like the shout out of like her having the power to, bring in women because she, has Hello Sunshine, her production company, which is now, such a beast in Hollywood. So yeah, just, would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's tough because, on one hand, it's an interview with Glamour magazine. It's not a business magazine, it's not a
Right.
tech one. And it's in the broader context of her promoting the morning show. So I get that, but I do see how it's a missed opportunity for her, to your point, to talk about what that future of filmmaking looks like.
Hmm.
Like, I think especially when they asked her, how do you use AI? And
Hmm.
sure, it's fair that she took it as the personal question or kind of went the personal route, and fine. But that could have been the opportunity for her to say, I use AI every day in these ways. But in filmmaking, here's what I see the future can
Yeah.
be, or here's
Hmm.
what I'm doing now, or kind of anything. Like, she definitely doesn't have to be any kind of oracle here, right? But
Hmm.
to your point, Sonia, it is a missed opportunity to talk about what that future of filmmaking truly looks like, at least from any kind of a single point of tactical execution, right? Not, she doesn't have to get into the hardcore of like the ethics behind it,
Hmm.
but she could talk about perhaps, and I'm going to make this up because I'm not in the film industry, but she could talk about perhaps the more technical, onerous tasks that
Yeah.
could be handled by some kind of AI tool or LLM.
Yeah, she could have bridged. She could have said, like, we're always going to need the creative minds to do XYZ, but like now we can storyboard faster. We
Hmm.
can, get some visual representation of a scene like up for us, and we can like iterate quickly. So it's going to save us time on XYZ, but we're always going to do, you know, the rest of this. Like, I think that's what the industry is kind of like needing right now, especially from somebody like her
Hmm.
who's in a leadership position. So yeah, she could, and I mean, I'll give her grace that like it's Glamour magazine and she had, 3 column inches or whatever, but in one sentence, she probably could have like brought a lot more clarity to this whole situation.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Oh, Kristen, I also want to ask, comms expert,
Hmm.
could you elaborate a little bit more, like for our audience, what bridging is?
Bridging, oh yes, oh my gosh, let's take it right back. But it is saying what you want to say or what you need to say, um, what your task at hand is, saying another statement and then kind of bridging back to the topic at hand. Or it is, I want to talk about AI. I want to bridge to like current cultural relevance, and then I want to like carry on with like whatever the topic is. But it's essentially bringing 2 topics together in a way that feels cohesive, but also allows you to like say what you want to say while also answering the question.
Yeah,
So it's
politicians do this all the time.
yeah, it's some
And
good
so should
Jedi mind tricks.
celebrities.
Yeah, yeah, and some suck at it, and some are so great at it. You're like, what did I just hear? What did this
Hmm.
Right,
person just say? Yeah,
where Donald Trump is effective at it is that he steamrolls you, right? He just
yeah,
says what he wants to say.
yeah. I wouldn't call him a great bridger. Like he would be somebody who like doesn't bridge that often. Like
That's
he
actually
just,
true, you're right.
yeah,
He
he
doesn't
just
bridge,
is
he
like,
steamrolls. It's
I'm
not
gonna say
bridging.
whatever I want to say. Like and that's it, versus somebody who bridges is cognizant of what's being asked. They're cognizant of like what's important to get out, and then tries to like merge the two.
Yeah, you're entirely right on that. You're right. Trump doesn't bridge. That's the whole point.
But his comms director is great at it. She will like repeat a question, and then she will bridge to whatever the hell she wants to talk about in one of those briefing things. So she'll kind of, she'll say like, okay, you care about immigration, and then she'll bridge to like an administration talking point. Um,
Mhm.
and then that's how she gets through answering a question that she doesn't really want to answer.
Yeah. One other thing that you mentioned while we were discussing this is that she seemed like she had been prepped by her publicists or her team about like what the answer should be. So can you kind of like give us details on how that
For
usually
sure.
happens?
Yeah, I mean, I read the answer to this question as like I can kind of visualize it in the back of the room as like her and her publicist are like prepping for the interview. Like, okay, you know, we're gonna talk about X, Y, and Z. Like of the current moment, you know, AI is like such a topic that everybody is talking about and wants to hear about, and I'm sure it bridges to like other conversations she may have had with the reporter in the past, or just like what the initial conversations were. But yeah, it read very much as like, okay, let's make sure we get out the AI talking points because everybody's talking about AI right now, and like you want to join that conversation, which is kind of like sadly like a classic comms thing, which is, make sure you address the current thing so
Yeah.
that you're kind of like relevant.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing was the fact that her first sentence was that it's important to get women involved because,
Oh
Reese
yes.
Witherspoon, it's like she's very famously like, wants to put like women in the conversation, which yes, all the power to her. Like one of the reasons why I admire her is she keeps her friends working, right? She gets Nicole Kidman in there. She creates Big Little Lies season 2 and 3 because like she's gonna keep us all, watching that show and she wants to keep them working. So I like in that respect, like you can see her hustling to get more women focused shows out there and narratives and storylines and all that. Um, but here is where you're kind of just like, it's like a throwaway sentence of like, let's get women involved in AI, but not really saying like, this is what I'm actually going to do to like facilitate women working in the space when she has that power, right? With like her production company, which even though it's been sold off and all that, she still is involved with it on a pretty like, daily basis. It's kind of for me, kind of giving up that responsibility of like her being a producer, founder, industry leader that could carry more weight in like how she affects that change.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
in her defense, like Hello Sunshine, I think is like has a pretty laser focus on like women-led stories. I think all the stories they option are like by female authors,
Authors. Hmm.
if I'm remembering that right. So I think she definitely like walks the walk and practices what she preaches. But like, yeah, it seems kind of like pedantic to say that, or like redundant. Like, obviously anyone with a pulse needs to be like figuring out AI right now. It's not just women.
that's true. I
Hmm.
think I think where I'm reluctant to criticize is I if that statement seems shallow, I still agree with it
Hmm.
in the broad strokes of women should be using AI. The reason I have is these tools, as we know them right now, these large language models. I mean, we can debate the AI versus large language model thing, but we don't need to right now. But like AI as we know it tends to be large language models are, these are all the input that went into making this what it is our history, right? Everything we've done online. But a lot of our history is largely men driven, right? And then these tools are also machine learning. So the more we use it, the more we're influencing it, the more we're giving it data. And women are about 20% less likely than men to use generative AI. So where I would say that yes, women really do need to be using it. Like, yeah, anyone with a pulse, I agree, but women in particular, it, for do it, because if we don't, then these models are going to be continually influenced by men and men focused points of view. It is an opportunity for women to quite literally get that seat at the table and influence the large language models to, maybe it's a small step forward, but it's a step towards that more, perhaps towards that more equitable society.
Yeah, well, you're going deep. I hadn't
Yeah.
considered the
I'm like,
patriarchal
that's a
aspect
great
of it.
answer. She could have said some of that,
Reese, call me. I know
You
I
know?
know. I'm sure you listen to this podcast.
Right? Exactly. Maybe it'll make its way to her. But that's the point. That's why I think she needs to hear this, right? She needs to get the pushback of like, it's not enough for you to just say, ooh, women talking point, AI talking point. It's like, no, like this is why it's important. And this is why I'm pushing for it to be, a thing.
Yeah,
And, she's constantly talking about the storytelling being a thing. Like, this is part of the story that women aren't getting their voices heard because they're not as involved.
I was just gonna say, I think it's like a natural place for her to sit in this debate. Like she is
Mhm.
a leader on like the female like filmmaker and producer and production side, and she should like step up into that role as an advocate. I will say like maybe she is behind closed doors or in like trade press or things that we may not be seeing, but like this was like a very obvious place where she could have said like one or two more things that could have been
Right.
additive to the debate. And there was a whole ass strike about this for like a year or
Mm-hmm.
something that like,
Right.
that
It's
took
true.
away like all of our Netflix shows for a really long time. And so people maybe forget that like AI was a huge part of why they were all on strike, like trying to figure
Mhm.
out rights and all of that. But um yeah, maybe people have forgotten, but it's like very important. And I would love to her to say more to like the general consumer, because I do think we're all considering like the influence and aspects of and the effects of AI on our lives. So like having her talk about it, how it affects her and like, you know, Hollywood would have been an interesting shining example.
Exactly. That's the other thing, right? Like, there's a lot of topics within AI that, just her talking about her personal use doesn't like talk about, the creative rights, the job displacement, quality control, revenue sharing, like data ethics that like is the conversation within Hollywood about AI. And I think if you are going to like, dip your toe in, then at least one of them,
Yeah.
have an opinion on one of them. You don't have to know everything, right? Like it's not her. It's not that. It's just she is a leader in Hollywood, and these are the concerns of all working actors, all writers, all like producers. And if she's coming out to, talk about it, then she should have an answer. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, and maybe they did talk at length about it, but Glamour was like, "Okay, we get like two paragraphs. We need to talk about like
Mhm.
how do you go from day to night, like some of this more like
Yeah, right.
like the lighter side of it. We'll see. But I
I
would
also
like
want to
to
know
see
if
our
she's an investor in Perplexity. Why did she
why did
mention Perplexity versus ChatGPT? Just saying.
Wouldn't it be sad though if she did, by the way, like if she did talk about AI and
And they cut her
filmmaking
off.
and if they just cut it because they're like, oh, that's boring. Nobody
Boring,
wants
yeah.
that. They want to go day to night.
Yeah, maybe. Glamour,
get
show us the, release the tapes or whatever.
Release the files.
yeah, hilarious.